The spring sunlight was radiant, with clouds and rain now past. Luo Li, her snowy white body glistening with a trace of fragrant sweat, gently rested on Mu Chen's chest. Her lazy demeanor exuded an indescribable allure, with her long lashes fluttering lightly, her eyes shy yet captivating. Mu Chen gazed at the girl in his arms, his hand tenderly caressing her smooth, delicate back, feeling her deep attachment to him, and his heart swelled with boundless affection. In his arms, Luo Li blinked, her eyes lazily opening, her glazed, jewel-like gaze brimming with unspoken affection, slightly shy as she stared at Mu Chen. "Bad boy, you promised this would happen after our wedding." Luo Li bit her rosy lip lightly, unable to resist pinching Mu Chen's arm. Mu Chen, hearing this, could only let out a dry laugh, tightening his embrace around the girl. Luo Li buried her face in Mu Chen's chest, her jade-like hand gently stroking her flat, firm abdomen. With a rare, innocent expression, she looked at Mu Chen and suddenly asked, "Do you like boys or girls?" Mu Chen was taken aback for a moment. Then a gentle smile appeared on his lips. "I like girls, because they'll be as beautiful as their mother." Luo Li's lips curled up in a smile as she stretched her long, delicate arm around Mu Chen's neck. With a bright, happy expression, she asked, "What would you name our daughter?" Mu Chen thought for a moment, his interest piqued, and smiled. "How about each of us picks one character? My name carries the character Chen, meaning dust, small and insignificant. I imagine my parents must have wanted me to live a life as humble and unnoticed as dust, so that I could live peacefully." Mu Chen smiled slightly, gently touching Luo Li's tight abdomen. "But if it's my daughter, I naturally hope she will be free and soaring, high above like a cloud. So, I'll choose the character Yan." Luo Li smiled faintly and tilted her head slightly. "I hope this world, this great 1,000 worlds, will rid itself of the evil clans and darkness, with the sunlight returning. So, if we have a daughter, I'd name her She. She means light." Mu Chen nodded with a smile. "Then, if we have a daughter, we'll name her Mu Yunxi. As for a son, we can name him Mu Tu or Mu Shi, whatever works." "You're really biased toward girls." Luo Li playfully glared at Mu Chen and said with mock annoyance. "Though, Mu Yunxi is a good name." Luo Li's beautiful eyes glowed softly as she bit her lip, a shine of expectation on her cheeks. That moment was irresistibly enchanting. Looking at Luo Li, whose eyes shone with hope, Mu Chen's heart swelled with affection. He slowly tightened his fingers, savoring the beauty of the moment, with an even brighter future awaiting. But if that heavenly evil god intended to destroy all this? A cold glint flashed in Mu Chen's eyes. Then, he would have no choice but to destroy the heavenly evil god. At that exact moment, far beneath the earth of the northern wilderness hill, on two lotus pedestals, the figures of two individuals who had kept their eyes closed for many years seemed to stir. Slowly, their eyes opened. As their eyes opened, endless spiritual light erupted behind them, enveloping the entire northern wilderness hill in its radiance. Within the depths of that spiritual light, two ancient shadows flickered, exuding an aura of boundless mystery and antiquity. One shadow radiated boundless light, its brilliance indestructible. The other emanated an endless, vast spiritual energy that would never deplete. These two shadows were none other than the boundless radiance body and the Tai Ling sacred body. After years of arduous cultivation, these two primordial law bodies had finally been perfected. At the same moment, Mu Chen in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy also felt a stirring within him. He sighed in relief, a sense of completion washing over him. Finally, it's complete. However, just as Mu Chen basked in that feeling of fulfillment, his pupils suddenly constricted. He sharply turned his head, his piercing gaze fixed on the direction beyond the great 1,000 worlds, where the demon domain lay. "Mu Chen, what's wrong?" Luo Li instantly noticed the change in him. "The heavenly evil god has appeared." Mu Chen's voice was low, laced with a fierce killing intent. At the same time, within a fortress-like city beyond the boundary of the great 1,000 worlds, the Flame Emperor and the Martial Ancestor, seated high on their platform, slowly opened their eyes. In their eyes, flames and vast spiritual energy flowed. A single glance exchanged, and a killing intent slowly spread from within their bodies. This killing intent, as soon as it was released, enveloped the entire city. In an instant, the expressions of countless powerful beings in the city changed, their gazes suddenly lifting, staring in the direction of the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor. Swish! Xun'er, Kai Lin, Ing Huan, and Ling Qingzhu, the four matriarchs of the Boundless Fire Domain and Martial Realm, appeared behind the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor. What happened? They asked in a deep voice. The Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor's expressions were cold, and then a deep voice rang out, echoing in the ears of countless powerful beings in the city. The heavenly evil god has appeared. Send the order, the highest level of alert. Cease all forward offensive. As soon as this was said, countless powerful beings trembled, their gazes shifting constantly, filled with anger, fear, and a sense of relief. For the past 5 years, the heavenly evil god had completely disappeared. However, although the being himself was gone, the fear he had caused still loomed over all creatures in the great thousand worlds. Now, this lingering fear had resurfaced, but rather than causing more anxiety, it actually gave many powerful beings a sense of relief. At least, they would no longer have to live in constant fear, wondering when the heavenly evil god would suddenly descend at some unsuspecting moment. In any case, it would only be a battle to the death. The Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor raised their heads and gazed beyond the distant void. Their eyes seemed to pierce through the barriers of space, seeing the dark end of it all. There, the darkness surged, boundless demonic energy turning into rolling black clouds. And above those black clouds stood a figure in a white robe, hands clasped behind his back. His face was like jade, resembling that of a scholar, and an eerie sense of compassion emanated from him. 3 vertical eyes opened on his forehead, with demonic light flowing within them. At a certain moment, his eyes shifted. He slightly raised his head, a smile that seemed neither truly happy nor truly mocking, and his gaze collided with that of the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor, who were far beyond. The 3 gazes clashed, and the void trembled. An invisible pressure spread out, enveloping 1,000,000 miles. 2 of you, it's been a long time. The heavenly evil god murmured softly. Then, his long, jade-like finger pointed towards the 2 of them from afar, his expression ambiguous. The day I descend will be the day of your great thousand worlds destruction. As his finger fell, the world darkened, and at that moment, the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor's senses were completely blocked. The spiritual light in their eyes faded. They quietly gazed into the void, their expressions gradually turning colder. One more day, and the heavenly evil god will descend. Hearing this, the 4 matriarchs behind them also became extremely serious. This day has finally arrived. What about Chen? Xun'er asked with a slight furrow of her brows. The Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor smiled faintly upon hearing this. He has lived up to expectations. In the previous moment, they had also felt a sense of completion, a wave forming in the great thousand world, which clearly belonged to Chen. The 4 matriarchs' tense faces relaxed slightly. If Chen succeeded, then the great thousand worlds still had a chance to fight. Next, let's see just how strong the peak state of the nine-eyed evil god really is. The Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor raised their heads, their voice calm and even somewhat expectant. At the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, Chen also stood up and extended his hand to Luo Li. We should go now. Tomorrow, the fate of the great thousand world will be decided. Luo Li's face was also filled with seriousness as she gently nodded. Chen's sleeve waved, and the surrounding spiritual mist began to dissipate. He held Luo Li's hand, and their figures gradually ascended into the air. At the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, countless students seemed to sense something. They all looked up, then solemnly bent down, cupping their fists. Their youthful voices rang out loudly across the heavens and earth. Senior, may you return victorious. At one corner of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, Shun Sangxing, Li Xiantong, Wen Qingxian, and Tang Xun'er also looked up at Chen's figure in the sky, then slowly bent down and cupped their fists. Chen, we wait here, warming the wine, hoping for your triumphant return. They all understood that Chen's journey was to fight for the great thousand world. In the sky, Chen heard the resounding voices between heaven and earth, and he smiled slightly. He turned his head to Luo Li and softly said, "For you, and for the future child named Mu Yunxi, this battle I will not lose." At the border where the great thousand world meets the demon domain, the earth was shattered, the sky darkened, and even space seemed unstable, with cracks constantly spreading. In the past 6 months, the two sides have turned this place into a battlefield, with countless strong warriors thrown into the fray, leading to the fall of innumerable powerful beings. Even the very land here has taken on a dark red hue, showing the brutality of the conflict. This continent is the most crucial battlefield between the Great Thousand Worlds and the extraterritorial evil clan, which is why it is known as the Spirit Demon Continent. Across this continent, an endless abyss stretches far and wide, resembling the monstrous jaws of a demon. Within the abyss, torrents of water surge, crashing against the rocks with deafening roars. On one side of the Spirit Demon Continent lies the Demon Domain, while the other side faces the Great Thousand Worlds. During the half-year-long war, the battles on the Spirit Demon Continent never ceased. However, today, this blood-stained land has strangely fallen into an unusual calm. But everyone knows that beneath this calm, a catastrophic storm, one that will decide the fate of countless beings in the Great Thousand Worlds, is brewing. If they survive, the Great Thousand Worlds will enjoy peace. If not, billions of lives will be reduced to slaves, slaughtered at will, living a fate worse than death. Thus, at this moment, countless secret arts are employed, turning spiritual energy into spirit mirrors, which project the images of the Spirit Demon Continent to every corner of the Great Thousand Worlds. On this day, the beings of the Great Thousand Worlds all look up. Above every continent, spirit lights form and take shape, creating massive spiritual mirrors in the sky. Within these mirrors, the Spirit Demon Continent is clearly reflected. All the beings lay aside their concerns, their eyes trembling as they gaze at the immense spiritual mirrors in the sky, murmuring low prayers. They pray for the Great Thousand Worlds to emerge victorious. Through the spirit mirror, they can see, to the east of the Spirit Demon Continent, spiritual light surging and filling the sky, with countless figures spreading across the horizon. In the far distance, more and more figures approach. Clearly, on this day, nearly 70 or 80% of the powerful beings from the Great Thousand Worlds have gathered on the Spirit Demon Continent. On the western side of the Spirit Demon Continent, however, demonic energy rages, with thick demonic clouds covering the sky. Within these clouds, countless malicious eyes can be seen, as if Xun'er from hell are emerging, bent on destroying everything in this world. To the east of the Spirit Demon Continent, spiritual energy surges. At the highest point, the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor stand with their hands behind their backs. Behind them, countless powerful beings from the Great Thousand Worlds gaze at these two figures, feeling a sense of reassurance. In these years, the presence of the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor has kept the extraterritorial evil clan from invading the Great Thousand Worlds. For the Great Thousand Worlds, these two are undoubtedly the rightful leaders. The four matriarchs of the martial realm, Chen, the Undying Lord, the Green-Robed Sword Saint, the clan leaders of the 5 ancient clans, and the First Elder are all gathered behind the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor. Their faces are stern as they gaze at the distant demon domain, and there is a faint trace of tension in their eyes. Clearly, the Heaven Evil God, who is yet to appear, fills them with great fear and unease. Compared to the tension felt by the others, the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor remain much calmer. Their gazes are deep, as if they could pierce through the void itself. Time does not wait for me. If I had even 30 more years, I would surely leave my complete true name on the cosmic scroll. At that time, no matter what tricks the Heaven Evil God has, I could suppress him, Martial Ancestor said, gazing into the void with a sigh of regret. The Flame Emperor nodded in agreement, for he shared the same thought. With 30 more years, they could inscribe their complete true name on the cosmic scroll. At that time, they would naturally have no fear of the Heaven Evil God. However, the Heaven Evil God could likely sense this, so he would never give them this opportunity. At this thought, Even the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor felt a faint sense of regret, not out of fear, but because they were just one step away from reaching perfection. But just as they were speaking, both the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor suddenly stiffened, their gazes sharp as they looked up coldly toward the boundless demonic energy in the west. Behind them, Chen, the green-robed sword saint, the true Dragon Emperor, and many other peak beings of the Great Thousand Worlds also felt an overwhelming demonic pressure descending upon them from the heavens, as if it were covering the entire world. Under this demonic pressure, even those like Chen, at the late saint grade, felt a surge of fear. The countless powerful armies from the Great Thousand Worlds behind them fell into a deep, unnatural silence, their faces filled with terror and fear. "Welcome, my God." At the same time, the army of the extraterritorial evil clan erupted in a deafening, frenzied cheer. Every member of the extraterritorial evil clan dropped to their knees, their collective power immense. Among them, top-tier experts from the extraterritorial evil clan, including the sacred heavenly demon emperor, also knelt on one knee, casting malicious and triumphant glances toward the Great Thousand Worlds. They knew that when the heavenly evil god descended, the balance of power between the two sides would be completely shattered. Amid the deafening cheers, the demonic cloud swirled, layers upon layers retreating until, finally, a figure in white robes emerged, stepping calmly through the demonic cloud, as if strolling leisurely, appearing at the forefront of the extraterritorial evil clan's army. The figure in white was handsome, with a gentle smile at the corners of his lips. His body emitted a soft, shimmering glow, and there was no trace of the malice characteristic of the extraterritorial evil clan. On the contrary, under the smile, there was an unusual aura of compassion. However, the three vertical eyes on his forehead gave him an eerie air, creating a strange mixture of two vastly different energies that made him appear exceedingly mysterious. It was the heavenly evil god. With a light wave of his sleeve, the overwhelming cheers immediately fell into silence. He smiled as he turned his gaze toward the direction of the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor, speaking calmly. 5 years later, we finally meet again. His voice was not loud, yet when it fell, the entire spirit demon continent trembled, and the space before him shattered in waves of destruction, collapsing piece by piece. The Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor's faces grew cold, their eyes sharp like blades, locking onto the heavenly evil god without a word. "You two are truly extraordinary. If it weren't for my deep reserves, I might not have been able to deal with you. So, if you two are willing to bear my demon god seal, I may spare the lives of all the beings in the Great Thousand Worlds," the heavenly evil god said, his voice low and deep as he looked at the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor. "The mercy of the enemy is something we can never trust," the Flame Emperor replied with a faint smile. "Besides, who wins and who loses is still uncertain." The heavenly evil god chuckled indifferently. "In these 5 years, you two have indeed grown stronger. However, as I've said before, once I restore my nine-eyes state, the Great Thousand Worlds will have no opponents left." As his voice fell, the heavenly evil god suddenly stepped forward. In that instant, a terrifying surge of demonic might erupted. A massive column of demonic energy, 100,000 feet tall, shot into the sky, swallowing all the light in the heavens and plunging the world into darkness. In the darkness, a fearsome demonic presence, like a world-destroying serpent, wound its way forward, invoking boundless terror. On the side of the Great Thousand Worlds, countless powerful beings were enveloped in darkness, crying out in panic. This darkness could corrode the heart and mind, and even the heavenly supreme trembled, unable to control themselves. Prolonged exposure would drive anyone mad. Roar. At the moment the Great Thousand Worlds fell into chaos, a tremendous flame suddenly erupted, transforming into a blazing lotus flame, slowly spinning and emitting light that dispelled the darkness. Upon the lotus flame, the Flame Emperor's long hair billowed, his expression as cold as ice. Boom. At the same time, 8 ancient ancestral talismans spun into the air, forming radiant halos, each releasing waves of powerful light to push back the darkness. In the dark world, The lotus flame and the ancestral talisman's halos illuminated one corner, fighting back against the encroaching dark forces. However, the darkness still covered most of the sky, continuously devouring the light and threatening to engulf the great thousand worlds once again. The two sides continued to struggle, the light flickering between bright and dim. Countless eyes in the great thousand worlds trembled as they watched, their hearts filled with prayer. They all knew that the lotus flame and the ancestral talismans represented the last hope of the great thousand worlds. I told you, with just the two of you, you cannot stop me, the heavenly evil god said indifferently, his sleeves waving. Boundless darkness surged forward, spreading endlessly. The darkness slowly devoured the light emanating from the lotus flame and the ancestral talismans, inch by inch. Seeing this, the beings of the great thousand worlds felt their hearts chill. Indeed, had the heavenly evil god gained the upper hand? Yet, just as despair began to take root, an unusual sound suddenly rang out across the heavens and earth. Moments later, a clear, bright laugh echoed from afar, growing louder until it seemed to resound throughout the entire great thousand worlds. If two isn't enough, then let's add one more. As the voice rang out, countless people turned their gazes toward the rear, and to their shock and excitement, they saw an overwhelming surge of spiritual energy gathering in the air. Mysterious world force descended from the sky, gradually forming an endless, otherworldly light screen. The heavenly scroll, Qin Tian, Qin Yanjing, the sword saint in green robes, and other peak experts were all stirred up upon seeing the mysterious light screen. They cried out excitedly, "It's Mu Chen! He's finally here. He triggered the cosmic star cluster. He's going to leave his name on the list." Their eyes filled with excitement as they gazed at the mysterious light screen, where, on a distant mountain, a slender figure slowly appeared. The familiar form was none other than Mu Chen. At the same time, Mu Chen, from afar, looked up and fixed his gaze on the cosmic star cluster before raising two fingers, as though holding a brush, and slowly brought them down. At that very moment, a loud voice rang out, echoing through the heavens and earth. "Today, my name, Mu Chen, will be on the cosmic star cluster." The resounding voice reverberated, carrying a mysterious power that echoed in every corner of the great thousand worlds. Meanwhile, across the continents of the great thousand worlds, everyone looked up, shocked by the sight of the descending cloud light screen in the spiritual light mirror. The light screen was mysterious and ancient, exuding an indescribable aura of authority, as if it carried the weight of the world. On the spirit demon continent, countless powerful beings trembled as they watched this scene, fully aware of the significance of the appearance of the cosmic star cluster. This meant that, aside from the Flame Emperor and the Martial Ancestor, another individual would be joining the ranks of the list. For the Great Thousand Worlds, this was undoubtedly huge news. Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor exchanged satisfied glances as they watched this moment. At this critical juncture, Mu Chen had finally appeared, and his arrival had restored the morale of the Great Thousand Worlds. Cosmic Star Cluster? The appearance of the Cosmic Star Cluster dispelled the endless darkness. The heavenly evil god's expression darkened, and his sharp gaze locked onto the slender figure under the Cosmic Star Cluster. "So, after 5 years of planning, you Great Thousand Worlds are trying to create another one on the list." The heavenly evil god squinted his eyes, and then sneered, saying, "Though this person is strong and has triggered the Cosmic Star Cluster, he is still far from leaving his name on the list." The heavenly evil god's sharp eyes immediately saw through Mu Chen's strength. While Mu Chen had surpassed the late saint grade, this alone was still not enough to secure a permanent spot on the Cosmic Star Cluster. His cold laugh spread, reaching Mu Chen's ears from afar. Yet, Mu Chen's expression remained unshaken. He simply looked up, his gaze filled with heat and longing, staring at the ancient Cosmic Star Cluster. The wish he made that day was now finally about to come true. Mu Chen formed a seal with his hands, and the glazed light behind him burst forth. Everyone then saw an ancient light shadow appear, exuding an immense sense of immortality. The eternal undying body. Mu Chen's thoughts moved, and the eternal undying body took a step forward, merging directly with his own body. In an instant, the glazed light erupted from within Mu Chen, and his entire form became translucent and radiant, spiritual energy swirling around him. An indescribable surge of spiritual power spread out. At this moment, even Qin Tian and the other peak experts, all at the late Saint grade, felt immense pressure. Under the watchful eyes of countless onlookers, Mu Chen extended his finger and, with extreme slowness, lowered it towards the cosmic star cluster. Buzz. As soon as his finger made contact, the entire world seemed to shake, and a mysterious force from the cosmic star cluster created a barrier, preventing Mu Chen from making his mark. Almost there. Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor observed, clearly seeing that while Mu Chen's own strength had triggered the cosmic star cluster, it was still not enough to leave his true name on it. This was a matter of foundation. Despite Mu Chen's youth and his acceptance of the immortal Emperor's legacy, reaching this point was already extraordinary. Looks like your hope is shattered. The heavenly evil god sneered as he watched. Meanwhile, the extraterritorial evil clan's powerful beings burst into mocking laughter, their thunderous voices striking at the morale of the great thousand worlds. However, the Flame Emperor, Martial Ancestor, and other top experts remained unmoved, as they had already anticipated this scene. They knew Mu Chen's ultimate trump card to leave his name on the list wasn't solely dependent on his own power. Below the cosmic star cluster, Mu Chen's expression remained calm. After encountering the massive resistance when trying to make his mark, he didn't force it. Instead, he closed his eyes slightly. He kept his eyes shut for several breaths. As countless people were left bewildered, the space behind Mu Chen suddenly shattered, and then everyone saw two figures in black and white robes stepping through the air, landing beside Mu Chen. The two figures, dressed in black and white long robes, appeared handsome and tall, strikingly similar to Mu Chen in every way. "You're a bit late." The black-robed Mu Chen smiled and said. "Right on time." Mu Chen smiled back and said, "Let's begin." Both the black-robed and white-robed Mu Chen nodded. Then they formed hand seals, and instantly, vast spiritual light surged behind them, as if it had transformed into the spiritual energy world. Within that world of spiritual energy, two ancient light shadows slowly emerged. One of the shadows, entirely crystalline, radiated boundless light. Wherever the light reached, even the space became solid, unbreakable. The other shadow, though somewhat ethereal, condensed an indescribable torrent of spiritual energy. The strength of this energy was so immense that even Qin Tian and the others, who were in the late Saint grade, felt a sense of insignificance. Boundless Radiance Body. Tai Ling's sacred body. All the heavenly supremes gazed at the two ancient light shadows with fiery eyes. This was the rumored pair of the 5 primordial law bodies, and it was incredible to see that Mu Chen had successfully cultivated them. With this, Mu Chen had now mastered 3 primordial law bodies, an unprecedented feat. He really did it. The Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor both sighed. The one Qi transforms 3 purities was indeed a profound technique, but it was Mu Chen's unique affinity for it. This meant that the technique was suited to him, as even they, the two of them, might not be able to execute it as perfectly as Mu Chen. The mocking smile on the face of the heavenly evil god froze for a moment, and then his eyes darkened as he stared at Mu Chen. I never expected someone to gather 3 primordial law bodies in one person. He immediately recognized that the 3 Mu Chens were one and the same. This must be a highly advanced clone technique, yet each remained independent, which allowed each one to cultivate a primordial law body. On the heavenly scroll, everything relied on one's own strength, but now that the 3 Mu Chens were one entity, they could naturally cooperate as one. With this, leaving a name on the scroll was no longer impossible. The heavenly evil god's eyes flickered, and he considered interfering, but ultimately decided against it. When the heavenly scroll appeared, it was at the peak of the world force. If he tried to destroy it now, he would provoke a counterattack from the scroll. Although he planned to seize control of the heavenly scroll later, this was clearly not the right time. As a result, the demonic aura around the heavenly evil god gradually subsided, and he coldly watched the scene before him. Buzz. At this moment, the boundless radiance body and Tai Ling's sacred body merged into the bodies of the black-robed and white-robed Mu Chen, causing the spiritual energy within their bodies to surge to an overwhelming level. Allow us to lend you a hand. The black-robed and white-robed Mu-Chun let out a long howl and simultaneously struck out. Two streams of spiritual energy, as solid as reality, shot out from their palms. Within the torrents of energy, the spiritual power condensed into stars, dazzling and vast. Boom. The two torrents of spiritual energy seemed to converge at Mu-Chen's fingertips, and at that moment, his finger even appeared to become slightly transparent. Mu-Chen's face grew serious as he slowly raised his finger, which felt as heavy as 1,000 mountains, and gently pointed again. The moment his finger touched down, the mysterious obstruction reappeared. But this time, a sharp glint flashed in Mu-Chen's eyes, and he struck out fiercely with his finger. Buzz! In that instant, it was as if a ripple spread from the heavenly scroll, radiating throughout the entire Great Thousand Worlds. All beings within the Great Thousand Worlds heard an ancient sound wave echo in their ears. The mysterious obstruction was finally pierced, and Mu-Chun could feel his finger landing on the cloud-like, mysterious light screen. His expression grew solemn as his finger moved, like a brush tracing the path of a dragon and snake. As Mu-Chen's finger moved, everyone was stunned to see mysterious forces gather on the ancient heavenly scroll, and with each stroke, the shape gradually began to form. Finally, when the strokes stopped, a tremendous force surged outward, and on the heavenly scroll, the character Mu was deeply engraved. Mu. When the last stroke was made, Mu-Chen paused for a moment, intending to continue writing, but stopped himself. He sensed that, in order to continue, his power was insufficient. On the celestial scroll, a true name consists of two parts, the surname and the given name. Only when both parts are completed can it be considered a true engraving of the true name. However, completing the second part is much more difficult than the first. No wonder even the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor were only able to reach the second step back then. Mu-Chen shook his head, feeling a slight regret. If he could leave behind a complete true name, dealing with the heavenly evil god wouldn't be a difficult task. With a sigh, Mu-Chun slowly withdrew his fingers. At the same time, on the celestial scroll, the character Mu shone with endless spiritual light, as if it had been engraved deep into the world. A mysterious force descended, like a divine enlightenment, enveloping the three Mu-Chen's bodies. The three Mu-Chens closed their eyes slightly, their robes billowing, and everyone could feel an irresistible pressure slowly emanating from their bodies. This pressure completely surpassed the saint grade. It was a true transformation in every sense of the word. The three Mu-Chens opened their eyes and exchanged a smile. In that moment, they could feel a mysterious and tremendous power within them, the power of the world force. Now, they were undoubtedly countless times stronger than before. Congratulations, you're now on the list, said the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor with a smile, cupping their fists in respect from afar. At this moment, Mu-Chun had finally reached the same position as they had. Across the spirit demon continent and all the continents of the Great Thousand Worlds, countless beings watched this scene with intense excitement. Then, a voice resonated throughout the Great Thousand Worlds, a cheer that shook the heavens. Congratulations, Mu Supreme, you're on the list. Qin Tian, the sword saint in green robe, and other peak experts all bowed in respect, their voices filled with a trace of excitement and awe. The moment Mu-Chun inscribed his true name on the celestial scroll, he had already earned the right to stand alongside the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor. The title of Mu Supreme confirmed his status. For at this moment, Mu-Chun had become the third individual on the celestial scroll in the entire Great Thousand World. Brilliant and magnificent spiritual light burst from the celestial scroll, and below it, the three Mu-Chens stood side by side. At the center of their brows, spiritual light gathered, eventually forming a mysterious light rune. The light rune seemed to be made up of three hooked jade-like points, each pointed towards the center. The three jade points slowly rotated, emitting a marvelous vibration, exuding a mysterious and solemn majesty. For this light rune could only be possessed by those whose names were engraved on the celestial scroll. As the cheers flooded the air, the light from the celestial scroll continued to shine for a while, before gradually fading away, completely disappearing from the heavens and earth, leaving no trace behind. Finally succeeded. Qin Tian and other late-stage Saint-grade experts looked on with excitement as they witnessed this moment. The pressure emanating from Mu Chen's body was no less than that of the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor. What was even more exhilarating was that it wasn't just one Mu Chen, but three. The power of the three Mu Chens was identical, meaning that Mu Chen's name being inscribed on the list had effectively created three individuals of the same status. In an instant, the Great Thousand World now had 5 beings on the celestial scroll. With such a lineup and momentum, it was undoubtedly the strongest force the Great Thousand World had ever seen. Facing 5 against 1, even the heavenly evil god would likely find this a tough challenge, right? On the mountain peak, Mu Chen raised his head at this moment. Then, the 3 Mu Chens moved, appearing beside the Flame Emperor and Martial Ancestor as if they had teleported. Vast spiritual light exploded from their bodies, resembling 3 great suns slowly rising, their light illuminating the world. Countless beings across the Great Thousand World watched in excitement as the darkness released by the heavenly evil god was slowly but surely pushed back. In the end, the darkness retreated from half of the spirit demon continent and could no longer invade. The entire world seemed to be divided into 2 at this moment. At this moment, the power of the Great Thousand World had finally reached the point where it could stand against the heavenly evil god. Mu Supreme. Mu Supreme. The countless beings in the Great Thousand Worlds all witnessed this heart-stirring scene, and the earlier oppressive atmosphere instantly vanished. Morale soared, and deafening cheers resounded through every corner of the Great Thousand Worlds. Amidst the torrent of cheers, even the extraterritorial evil clan began to show signs of stagnation, their previous arrogance dissipating. Damn it, I didn't expect the Great Thousand Worlds still had such a trump card, said the heavenly demon emperor, his face dark, his gaze fixed on Mu Chen, who resembled the rising sun. I remember this kid. Jiangya of the evil spirit clan perished at his hands. Back then, he was only at the immortal grade. To think that in just 5 years, he's reached this level. The dark heavenly demon emperor's voice was cold as he spoke. The other heavenly demon emperors also spoke up, and the scene became somewhat noisy. However, their chatter lasted only for a few moments before they all felt a detached gaze sweep over them. Instantly, their hearts shuddered, and they dared not speak further. The heavenly evil god cast a disinterested glance at them and spoke, still only a half-finished product. There's just a greater number of them. What difference does it make? After speaking, he ignored the demons and turned his gaze toward the 5 figures in the distance, each radiating immense spiritual light. It seems this is your trump card after 5 years of preparation, said the heavenly evil god, his voice without any fluctuation. However, do you think that just because there are more of them, you'll have any advantage? The corner of his mouth curled into a half-smile, a hint of mockery in his expression. The martial ancestor lowered his eyelids, his voice steady and unshaken like a mountain. Whether we can fight, we can only know by fighting. Well said. The heavenly evil god chuckled lightly. 3 strange evil eyes flashed on his forehead, their cold gleam sending a chill down the spine. Since that's the case, then let's begin the battle. If you lose to me, the trillions of beings in the Great Thousand Worlds will become slaves to my extraterritorial evil clan, treated as cattle to be slaughtered at will. A smile appeared on the heavenly evil god's face, warm and compassionate. Yet his words carried an undeniable cruelty, causing countless powerful beings in the Great Thousand Worlds to change color. Boom. Millions of strands of demonic energy suddenly erupted from the heavenly evil god's body. Each strand roared like a demonic dragon, and in that instant, the demonic aura blanketed the world. Standing in front of this torrent of demonic energy, the heavenly evil god truly resembled a world-destroying demon god. Demon Sun Annihilation. As the heavenly evil god's deep voice rang out, countless strands of demonic energy converged, ultimately transforming into 9 black suns in front of him. On top of the demon suns, demonic flames rose, emitting a destructive wave of energy. Even the slightest remnants of it caused the spirit demon continent to show signs of collapse. Boom! The 9 black suns shot out suddenly, heading straight for Mu Chun, the Flame Emperor, and the martial ancestor. Behind them, Qin Tian and the other heavenly supremes felt their scalps tingle as they saw the terrifying power of the demon suns. They felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness, like ants facing a raging flood. This level of confrontation was beyond world-shattering, and they had no chance to intervene. Mu Chun, the Flame Emperor, and the martial ancestor, seeing the heavenly evil god finally make a move, all wore serious expressions. They exchanged a brief look and nodded in agreement. Boom. The Flame Emperor was the first to act. He gripped his hand, and a black heavy ruler, burning with imperial flame, appeared in his grasp. His gaze was sharp, and as he held the ruler with both hands, he suddenly slashed it downward. Flame-splitting sea-devouring ruler. As the ruler fell, the world seemed to be filled with the sound of crashing waves, but instead of water, towering flames erupted. The imperial flame transformed into a beam of ruler light, burning everything in its path. This ruler, cultivated by the Flame Emperor in his youth, now unleashed a power that far surpassed even the most formidable divine abilities in the great thousand worlds. The martial ancestor also moved swiftly. The Thunder Emperor's scepter in his hand crackled with lightning, and the next moment, he slammed the scepter down, unleashing 3 massive lightning dragons. As the Flame Emperor and martial ancestor each intercepted 3 of the demon suns, the remaining 3 hurtled toward Mu Chun. Mu Chun looked up, his eyes reflecting the impending doom of the demon suns. He then turned his head slightly and gave a subtle nod to the white-robed Mu Chun. The latter smiled and took a step forward. Boom. As white-robed Mu Chun took that step, it seemed as if boundless light gathered from all directions in the world. Wall of light. White-robed Mu Chun spoke softly. The light condensed and transformed into a massive wall of light, blocking the path of the 3 demon suns that were roaring toward them. The wall of light stood firm in the void, as if the heavens and earth were collapsing, unshakable. This was the power of the boundless radiance body, possessing the most powerful defense of the primordial law body. Its defensive strength was unmatched in the entire great thousand worlds. Boom. Boom. In the void, an earth-shattering clash occurred as the forces collided violently. A deafening sound echoed, and the shockwaves spread out, causing the space to shatter. Fortunately, both sides were avoiding the residual waves from reaching the spirit demon continent, as both armies were present there. However, even so, the spirit demon continent was still struck by some of the finer shockwaves, causing earthquakes and mountain-shaking tremors. Massive cracks, like abyssal chasms, spread out. The powerhouses on both sides stared intensely at the void outside. There, facing the combined blockade of Mu Chun, Flame Emperor, and martial ancestor, the demon sun shattered, and the demonic aura ran rampant. Today, for the sake of the billions of lives in the great thousand worlds, we have no choice but to use numbers to overcome them. Flame Emperor let out a long howl, gripping the mysterious heavy ruler, and suddenly shot forward, aiming directly at the heavenly evil god. Martial ancestor also moved at the same time, his thunder scepter winding with lightning, emitting billions of bolts of thunder. Each bolt contained the power of destruction, striking at the heavenly evil god. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Mu Chun and black and white Mu Chun acted in perfect coordination. The 5 of them formed a siege formation, surrounding the heavenly evil god. Waves of earth-shattering attacks continuously surged toward the heavenly evil god. Boom, boom, boom. Outside the void, the terrifying confrontation clashed fiercely. Facing the combined assault of Mu Chun, Flame Emperor, martial ancestor, and the others, the heavenly evil god did not retreat even a single step. He laughed to the sky, revealing the might of the demon god. The demonic aura gathered, and he chose the most aggressive posture, clashing head-on with the 5 of them. The sound of destruction reverberated, echoing endlessly. With every impact, countless powerhouses on both sides felt their hearts leap in their chests. They knew that this ultimate confrontation would decide the fate of both sides. In the emptiness, an immense power formed a massive barrier, created by both sides' forces to prevent the shockwaves from spreading further. For an entire incense stick's worth of time, Both sides unleashed their full strength, clashing for over 10,000 rounds. Each of those rounds was powerful enough to destroy an entire continent. This showed just how intense the battle was. Boom. Another terrifying impact. The heavenly evil god stood in midair. Black and white Mu Chen were blasted back by the demonic aura. At this moment, his long hair scattered, his clothes torn to shreds, and his evil eye shone with boundless wicked light. The heavenly evil god twisted his neck and smiled with satisfaction. He looked at Mu Chen, Flame Emperor, and Martial Ancestor, laughing loudly. Not bad, not bad. How many years has it been since I had such a battle? You three have truly not disappointed me. Mu Chen, Flame Emperor, and Martial Ancestor did not respond. However, their gaze toward the heavenly evil god grew colder. The heavenly evil god didn't care. Instead, he laughed again, his voice like thunder, but the boundless cruelty hidden within it caused the very heavens and earth to change color. Ha ha ha. Come, let me see if you three can save the billions of lives in this great 1,000 world from my hands today. If you fail, I shall claim this great 1,000 world as mine. With the laughter fading, the heavenly evil god suddenly formed a seal with both hands. In that instant, as his cold voice rang out, the entire world seemed to tremble ever so slightly. The ninth eye, open for me.